has a good job. He's kind of like everything that Susan wants in a husband. And we'll get into this more, but kind of like her parents' ideal guy.
Okay.
So she's really latched on, but he's just not really feeling it. It was fun while it lasted. We could be friends. He gives her that old song and dance. Ends up breaking up with her.
Well, if you didn't have 2 kids.
And Susan, like I said, absolutely devastated by this breakup. She spent a lot of time obsessing over the relationship. On the day of the murders, and we're going to get into the murders here in a minute, Smith picked her sons up from daycare. Then she returned back to the factory where she worked in hopes of persuading Finlay to rekindle the romance. But she was rebuffed.
Okay.
Later, she calls a friend who works at a local bar to find out if Finlay had stopped in for a drink and if he'd asked about her or mentioned her.
Now she's got a little baby stalking going on.
So her friend's like, yeah, he came in, he's here, but no, he hasn't mentioned you at all. Saddened by this news that Finlay had not been talking about her, wasn't kind of feeling
discussing their breakup with people. Yeah, because she didn't matter to him. Probably, maybe. She's
pretty upset. She loads the kids up in the car to go for a drive. She thought maybe going for a drive might clear her head. She'd feel a little bit better. And she says she had to do some shopping at Walmart. However, later, employees at Walmart will say they do not remember anyone fitting Susan's description in the store at any time with 2 little boys.
Yeah, you think somebody would notice. I know a lot of people go through Walmart, but, somebody notices. Woman, 2 kids, right?
Well, as she leaves her home, pulls out of the driveway with the 2 little boys strapped in their car seats, it's the last time anybody's going to see these kids alive. By November 3rd, 1994, basically folding under pressure, Smith confessed to murdering her 2 sons, Michael Daniel Smith, who was born in 1991, and Alexander Tyler, who was born in 1993.
I don't know how you do it. I don't know.
We're going to actually play a segment from one of Susan's interviews on TV that she's on this news program pleading for her boys, talking about what it's been like this 9 days without them.
Oh, God.
The same day is when she folds under the pressure.
Wow.
So 1 minute she's crying those, what are they called, crocodile tears?
Crocodile tears.
And the next minute, not so much.
We're going to have to find out why they're called crocodile tears. Okay.
I would like to say to whoever has my children that they please bring them home.
Susan and David Smith appeared on the 9th day on, as I mentioned, 3 major networks to do interviews.
Right.
Susan said she was outraged, and it hurts that people speculate how she's involved in this disappearance. I can't believe people would say these mean things about me.
Reflecting it back on her.
Than caring about her missing children.
It's about her, how she feels.
Yeah.
You have to be some kind of, I don't know if monster's the right word, but just a cold, uncaring person to be able to plead so many people's emotions, to plead to the nation and have all this support coming in, probably money, letters, people saying they're praying for you, and just not even care that you're lying through your teeth.
So she sits down, conducts several interviews, and then a few hours later, she is taken to a church nearby for further questioning because the police are kind of applying pressure every day, bringing her back in for an interview, calling her back in. Hey, we need you to write this down.
Right.
Hey, can you come back and tell us this thing again?
Yep.
I mean, they're just keeping on. So when they take her to this church to conduct another interview, that's when she breaks down, admits everything. She begged a detective for his gun during the interview. She confessed she had submerged the boys in her car off a boat ramp. 120 feet from the shore, another water search is conducted, and 120 feet from the shore, the Mazda Protégé is discovered.
Wow. It floated way out there.
This is so sad. Divers that were working the scene, the fella who found the car, said that when he saw the vehicle, the first thing he saw was a tiny hand in the window.
Oh, my God.
And that he knew the children were inside the car.
Wow.
Yeah. Susan was allowed to write out a confession, and they wanted her to write this confession so she couldn't go back and recant.
Right.
Because every day her story had changed just a hair, a little something here, a little something there. So they had her write it down because they knew they could trip her up.
Yeah, because that's why they've been bringing her in over and over and over. Her story's changing, and these, small details getting changed around her. You can't keep up with lies when you keep lying and lying to trained professionals.
Susan tells detectives she was suicidal and living in a veil of tears.
Oh, poor girl.
She was planning to kill herself and her children. She drove around about an hour in the car with the kids, then took the kids down to the lake. She parked on a boat ramp. She says she is, staring at the water. She's thinking about driving into it, but she stops herself. She lifts a parking brake, and then she sits there for a few moments, upset, all the feelings. And then she lets it down, and just as the car is about to hit the water, she jumps out and watches her 2 little boys disappear into the dark water.
And that takes a minute for the car to sink. It ain't like it just goes straight down.
That is true. Yeah, it did take some time.
Yeah, it's probably 4.
And she claims at that
3
point,
to 6 minutes.
She couldn't get in. She just couldn't get the boys out of the car.
Right. Yeah. Do you believe this shit that she did all that contemplating and stuff? I don't think she did. I think she had a plan. And she went next. I could be totally wrong. I could be an asshole for saying it. I think she knew what she was going to do. Maybe not.
Yeah, I think we should get into this after we finish the case.
Okay.
But yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think in some of these cases, you can feel some sort of, empathy, compassion, sympathy for these mothers.
Not agree with them, but see how they ended up there.
Yeah. Not Susan Smith. And like I said, we'll get into that here in a few minutes. The divers who find the car, they get the vehicle removed from the lake, with witnesses stating that you could actually see the little boys in the back seat of the car strapped into their car seats as they pull the vehicle up.
Wow.
And many rescuers, detectives, law enforcement, emergency workers, the guy with the tow truck, people were like, this is something that you would never forget seeing.
Right. And all those people see stuff every day.
This is just an unforgettable moment.
I'm sure.
Overnight, the support for Susan Smith had completely gone away. People in Union, South Carolina were essentially forming a lynch mob, threatening her, cussing her as she made her way, to the courtroom. They have video of Susan Smith basically being arrested and driving, the police are driving her away and she's in the back seat of a car and people are standing along the sidewalks calling her every name in the book.
Yeah, if they had rotten fruit and vegetables, they'd be throwing it at her.
And there was a huge backlash in the black community. They were deeply upset because Smith had lied and attempted to make this crime what they felt like was a racial issue. Well, immediately, she's claiming it was a black man.
Yeah.
And it's that whole myth of the scary black man.
Yes. Back then in the early 90s, they were very big on running with the scary black man got pumped down into your brain all day, every day on TV. It's true. And then they still do a version of it. But back then, that was the best thing. Cops, any crime show, any news report. And that's why they ran. It caught wildfire when this first came out.
Was it the Michael Moore film? Was it Bowling for Columbine? Where he actually talks about, and he actually goes, I think, to LA and speaks with like a media professor.
Right. Who
talks about how there absolutely was this myth of the scary black man.
Right.
And this hysteria. And all you heard about was like all these gangs and shootings, and they're standing on like the corner of like Compton Boulevard.
Yeah.
And he's like, all you hear is how you're going to get shot and killed here. And then he's like, we've been standing here talking for like an hour and nothing's happened.
Yeah, right. Right. Exactly.
So that definitely was a thing. But people were outraged, It's like, here you've got this white woman crying over her 2 little white kids. Of course, everyone's feeling so sorry for her,
right,
concerned about these little boys, and then you're basically vilifying a black man who didn't do this and who doesn't even exist.
Right, and that generic
and
ass.
who's kind of looking a little bit like Dave Chappelle, doing that whole crackhead.
Yeah.
You know, where he has a little toboggan on, he's like a little crackhead guy, little beanie. That, the drawing, the sketch kind of reminds me of Dave Chappelle, like as the crackhead.
Oh, Tyrone?
Is that his name?
Yeah, he's like, you got some more of them Mountain Murders podcasts?
I love Tyrone.
No, but she gave a generic facial description. I mean, this was like she described a lot of black men. And the, communities of color were literally, the cops bit down pretty hard in that area. They were harassed outright. I mean, they were just cops crawling all over their neighborhoods. I mean, that's what was happening. And all because this woman killed her kids and lied.
This community is essentially being terrorized.
Yes.
Being profiled, being stopped.
Yes.
Roadblocks.
Young men being stopped left and right and, harassed
over
and asked questions.
Fake story.
Asked where they're going, where they're coming to, from. All this because of a lying woman who killed her own kids.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a big element of that story as well that I remember.
Well, let's get into a little bit of Susan's background. Susan Lee Vaughn was born September 26, 1971, to Harry and Linda Vaughn. She was the only daughter to this couple. Her mother, Linda, was a stay-at-home mom. Her father was a firefighter. They lived in Union, South Carolina, and of course, if I forgot to mention it in the beginning of this story, this is where the case takes place, is in Union, South Carolina. So Susan, born, bred there, basically lived there her whole life. Linda had a son, Michael, then Susan, then another son named Scott. The thing is, when Harry and Linda met, Linda was already pregnant with this child, Michael. So biologically, he was not Harry's son.
Okay.
Pretty quickly after Michael is born, Harry and Linda are married. They quickly have Susan. Now, the father, Harry, would fly into rages where he had threatened suicide. He threatened to kill Linda. He was an alcoholic. He, from what I'm reading and researching, believed his wife was like always cheating on him.
Oh, that's healthy.
He had some serious trust issues. And, she had been pregnant with another man's baby when he married her. Just a lot going on in this household.
Yeah, it sounds like I might not say toxic, but an unhealthy relationship.
Yeah, he'd come home from work. It was always, who you been sleeping with today?
Oh, so he's very insecure.
Screaming, yelling, threatening to kill her. And, of course, doing all of this in front of the kids. Some domestic violence. Really dysfunctional household. Susan Smith did not have a stable childhood, to say the least. Michael, her brother, would try to kill himself when Susan was only 3 years old. He had a lot of mental health issues.
Well, yeah, and a household like that's not going to help it.
He would spend time kind of in and out of mental institutions, just kind of back and forth between the house and these places because he just was like really struggling with depression, some sort of schizoid sort of behaviors.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot.
Well, the parents divorce eventually. Only about 5 weeks after the divorce, Harry commits suicide.
Wow.
Susan was only 6 years old when this happened. And despite the fact that she had had this very dysfunctional childhood, she actually was pretty close with her father. Like, she'd been somewhat of a daddy's girl. Really looked up to her father. So even though home life hadn't been great, and her father was definitely not blue ribbon winner.
Well, no, but dysfunction.
She had a really close relationship with him, and she loved him. He was her dad. Dysfunctional
families make family connections, too. It's just sometimes in weird ways, but yeah.
And when he shot himself, he didn't die immediately. He shot himself, called 911, was picked up by an ambulance, taken to the hospital, and he didn't actually die until he was at the hospital.
That sounds horrible. I mean, that just sounds brutal.
Well, with this being said, the very erratic home life, the unstable situation with her parents, then her father's suicide, her brother being hospitalized.
Yeah, that's a lot.
She was a really depressed kid. She also tried committing suicide by the age of 13, and she took a bunch of pills. Now,